So today we're talking about basic web components. What are they and how do you build them? So this is a basic introduction. All right, so we have here a web page. I've got a few elements: header, h1, main, h2, h3. Each one of those tags, each one of those elements has a particular semantic meaning behind it. So if I create a header, the browser knows what a header is. And h1, it's a heading, level 1. So there's CSS that's automatically associated with that in the browser. And there's other elements like buttons and input elements that have built-in functionality in addition to the built-in styling. So web components are our very own tags. We're creating our very own tags. So that's what we're going to do here. We're going to build our own custom web element. I have two script tags attached to my web page. First one, main.js. This one has almost nothing in it, just a DOM content loaded listener. Basically, I just want to know, hey, the web page is loaded. And if I look in the browser, sure enough, that message appears here. So my main.js is running. Now, the other tag, the other script, rather, bigbang.js, this is going to be our custom web component. We do not have to import this and use it anywhere. All we have to do is have the script tag connected to this. You'll see on my main.js, I have got no imports here. On the Big Bang file, there's no exporting of this. So we just have to run the script. And it's this bottom line right here that we've got. Window, custom elements, and window is the global object. We can even leave that off. We can just say customElements.define, Big Bang, Big Bang. This first one, that is the tag. So we are building something like this. I can now put a Big Bang element on my page. You can decide what you want these names to be. There has to be a hyphen in the name, though. This is one of the things that makes it stand out as a custom element. Whatever the name is that you choose, there needs to be a hyphen in the name somewhere. So we're defining this as our tag, our custom element, and this right here, this class, this is the thing that's going to build our actual element. So inside of here, we've got our constructor that runs, and anytime somebody adds one of these things to the page, we're going to be creating one of these things. So this class gets run, the constructor gets run to define what one of these is. Every time you add one to the page, we're running the constructor. We're saying, hey, I need another one of those things. Inside of here, one other thing that we need is a shadowRoot. So this is like the container that's going to hold your component. Custom web components, because they can contain styling, because they can contain scripts and functionality and behaviors, we don't want those things spilling out and impacting the rest of the page. I don't want to define CSS in here and have it change the way the rest of the page looks. The other way is fine. The rest of the page can have its styles cascade down into our page, into our component, but we don't want to affect the rest of the page. So the shadowRoot, we're attaching a shadow. So wherever we're putting this thing on the page, there's this container, this shadowRoot that is put on there, and it sort of creates a sandbox around our element. When we call attach shadow, there's one thing that we have to pass in here, one setting. So it's an options object, and the setting is mode. And it can be open or it can be closed. Open means that the parent script, main.js, can actually do things like document.querySelector and get inside of our element and see what the actual tags are that we're using inside of our custom component. If it's closed, they can't. That's it. That's all we're saying with mode open or closed. So I'm defining a shadowRoot. That's going to be my container. And then let's put a little bit of HTML inside of here. So I'll create a div. Once we have our element created, we will append this div to our shadowRoot. So now we have this shadowRoot created. We've got a div with some text inside of it. We're going to attach the div to this shadowRoot. And there we go. we have created a custom element. That's all it took, was for us to define a little bit of HTML. We haven't put any CSS or behaviors in here yet, but we've defined something right here, an HTML element. This is going to be my big bang, which in the tag is going to be this. So in here, nothing's happening yet because we haven't added one of these to the screen. But if I come back to here, I go inside my main element, and I'm going to define big bang, or I'm going to add bing bang to the page. Now I haven't put any content inside of here, but there it is. There is my custom component. I have created one, and I have added it to the page by just adding that tag. The text that is in there is built into what we defined inside this script. It doesn't have to be here. In fact, if I do something like this, it's ignored. It does not matter what I put inside of here. This defines what this content is. Which actually leads us to our next question. How do we get things nested inside? How would I put some content inside of here that becomes part of this custom element? And that's where we have a thing called slots. So we're going to jump into here first. And instead of doing this, so I'm going to comment this out. Instead of doing this where we're defining it all like this, I'm going to actually create a template. And so we'll call our variable template. So this is an actual HTML element, the template element. I have a video on templates. If you follow the link that's up at the top there, you can see that video as well. So we have a template element, and then I'm going to set its contents right here, template.innerHTML equals, and I'll use the backtick characters. So if I want, I could embed variables and other sorts of things. I can have a multi-line string, no problem. And here's the div that we originally had. I'm going to add a little bit more to this one. So I'm going to say h2, here's my Big Bang Theory header. We could leave it at that. I will come back and add some more here in just a moment. But this is now the template that I'm going to use. So instead of writing the content here like this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a copy of that template. So we'll say template.content.clone node and true, meaning I don't just want the template element, I want all of its contents, not just the div, but also the h2, everything that's inside. That's what this true means. We're going to go deep inside. And we'll do the same thing that we did before, shadowRoot.append our clone. Okay. Okay, so now this is an h2 element. And if we look in elements here in our dev tools, it still says Big Bang. And there's that text that we actually put into our web page, but that's not showing up here. All we're seeing here is this Big Bang. But notice we do have a closed shadow root. I can open this up, and there's the div, and there's the h2. So this is what's inside the shadow root, the stuff that we defined inside of our script. All right, coming back to this, now the idea of slots. Well, I want to put some content from here into my Big Bang element. So just like that, we've got the Big Bang tag itself, but I want to put some text of my own inside of here. So I'm going to create an element. Let's say it's an h2 element, and I'll say it's called characters. And I'm going to add a list . That should be enough, just so I have some content here. If I want to be able to use any of this content as part of the finished web component when it's built, what I need to do is I need to come into the element that I want to include and give it a name. I'm going to say it's going to use the slot which will have the name title. So we'll start with just this h2. This thing right here is going to be able to be included inside of here. So when we come over into our template that we were defining up at the top, more than just this h2, and actually let's make this an h1 because we're going to be adding an h2, I'm going to say that I'm going to define a slot with the name title. Like this. So this slot title right here is going to match up with slot name title. So the title in the two places, that's what connects this together. And we could have some default text if no title slot used in HTML. So right now, this is going to be replaced with this H2 element. And there it is, characters. So here's our H1 that we defined in our template, and this is the slot. So it's pulling it here, and I can see here's my H2 characters that I defined, and inside the shadow root, there's the div, there's the H1, and here's the slot. So this H2 got moved inside of here, and that is how we get this content to show up. The default text now is not showing up. If I removed this, I made it TTL by mistake. There is the default text that we defined inside the JavaScript file that is the web component. But if we have the correct name, now we get that content. If we want this UL to show up, well, then we should give it a targeting slot, and let's call this list. Here inside of our script, I'm going to add another slot. Now I don't have to put them in the same order. I'm creating slots. I could put it up here if I wanted. We could say slot name list. There we go. Now this spot is going to be replaced with that UL that we defined, the one with the slot list attribute right here. So this whole thing is going to be put in here, replacing this slot. And there it is. So here's our list. There's the H1, and here's the H2. And the order is the order that we defined inside of here. And that's it. That is the fundamentals of how you can create web components. Now, there is more to this. We can define styles, we can define behaviors and stuff, and I'm going to get into that in the next few videos in this series. But for now, have fun just playing around and creating your own custom web components. If you have any questions, feel free to leave those in the comments. I answer as many as I have time for. And as always, thanks for watching.